We're now joined by Spencer Kimball, the Associate Professor and Director of Emerson College Polling, one of the nation's top pollsters and a very busy man, presumably this time of year. Spencer, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, let's chat quickly about Emerson College's last poll that came out within the last week or two. Just like we had the Siena College director on yesterday, their poll showed it tied. Your poll with Emerson College also showing the Kamala Harris-Donald Trump race tied. What else did that poll reveal?
Well, as we take a look at those numbers, not just from this poll, but over the course of the campaign, you see a tightening of that race where Harris had a larger lead, and now we've seen it kind of cut back on that national scale to an even race. And what's driving it, primarily is male voters. They're breaking more for Trump this time, and female voters are either staying the same or slightly supporting Harris a little bit more, but not by the length that we're seeing in the male vote.
Interesting. Is it easy to tell through the polling if that has anything to do with Trump's kind of media blitz on all these manosphere, so to speak, podcasts that appeal to younger men? You know, he's gone on a number of different shows. Has that kind of made a difference with these demographic groups?
Well, I'm not sure what came first, the chicken or the egg, but it's very clear that those male voters are aligning with Trump. And it's not just white male voters, it's across all gender, all races. And we're also seeing it cross some of the educational barriers that traditionally vote more Democratic are switching to the Republican. And then those high earners that sometimes traditionally vote Republican are actually switching a little bit back for the Democrats, but not at the same proportion. And that's what's giving Trump a little bit more of an edge this cycle than where he was in 2020.
Interesting. There's been a little bit of chatter about the national popular vote, which of course has been won by Democrats for the last several cycles now. With this race as close as it is in the national polling, I mean, it is feasible to have a scenario where Donald Trump could win the national popular vote next Tuesday?
Yes, it's an interesting situation that we find ourselves in, because the conventional wisdom was that if the Republicans win the popular vote, then they should certainly win the Electoral College, as we saw in 2016 when they lost the popular vote, but won the Electoral College. You know, they lost by 2 points. In 2020, they lost by 4.5 points. Now it looks about even. However, the dynamics of the race have changed in that Harris could lose that popular vote, but still win the Electoral College by winning 3 or 4 key swing states.
Interesting. Would you attribute that perhaps to, you know, the amount of unbelievable money that's been spent specifically in the battleground states, less of a focus, of course, on the states that might be too far gone for either party?
Yeah, and I think to your point, you're seeing a state like Massachusetts or New York or California where Harris is polling 5 to 10 points below where Biden was 4 years ago. And then you see states like Florida and Texas that are polling 3 to 5 points higher for Trump than where he was. And you add that all together and you realize that popular vote, which seems so secure for the Democrats, has been loosened. And now we're getting into the Electoral College where Harris has really only campaigned in 8 states, 6, 7, 8 states. And we'll see if she's able to kind of peak in those states, even though the other 40 states might be a little bit lower for the Democrats than what we've seen in the past.
Interesting. Well, the polling out of not only Emerson College, but many pollsters showed this race with Kamala Harris with a 2, 3, 4 point lead a few months ago, and now it is essentially deadlocked, dead even. What's driving kind of these polls tightening here in the last month? Because that is a trend that we tend to see in cycles past. Is that just kind of people coming home here at the end here, or what's causing that?
Yeah, so for us political junkies, we've been watching this race for years, and we've been following every up and down and every press conference and an event. But for most voters, they really don't tune in until about 2, 3 weeks out from the election, and they see what's happening. This cycle is obviously unique in that President Biden decided not to take the nomination in July, and that really changed the dynamics of the race and shook up public opinion, where all of a sudden you went from a close race in June to Trump up by 5 points nationally to Biden dropping out, and then Harris up 5 points nationally. Now the voters are paying attention, they're zooming in on what's happening, and you're seeing a tightening of that race back to where we were kind of before that first debate, where it was a very competitive race and it now sits as a competitive race again.
Here we find ourselves 48, 48, 49, 49, wherever, depending on which poll you're looking at. Let's talk about Nevada specifically. You guys did a poll here in the Silver State at the start of October where Kamala Harris was leading by 1 point, so essentially tied within the margin of error. What else are you making of the polls that have been done in Nevada from Emerson and others?
Well, at Nevada, we have the congressional races. You have 4 districts, but they're usually competitive, particularly the 3rd district. Or the 4th. This cycle, it doesn't look like those congressional districts are all that competitive. And the Senate race, again, is supposed to be a competitive race with Jackie Rosen. That race hasn't really turned into a competitive race against Brown, the Republican. So what we're looking at is really that presidential, the top of the ticket, where it's getting all of that attention. And in Nevada and in some of the other states with large Hispanic populations, we're looking to see if Harris is able to increase her support with this group, or if Trump can make some inroads, and if that suggests other inroads in other states as well.
Does the polling indicate that groups of the battleground states, for example, the blue wall states or Arizona and Nevada out west, might fall in the same direction, or is it really kind of a crapshoot in terms of which way these battleground states end up falling on election night?
Yeah, I mean, the conventional wisdom is out in the Midwest. If one of the blue walls go to one of the candidates, they'll all fall in that direction. But what we're seeing out west, particularly, let's say in Arizona, their top issue is immigration. And when we get into these other states, the top issue is the economy. So it suggests that maybe in Arizona, their issues are slightly different, and you're not going to see the same vote totals for the candidates because their concerns might align with one of the candidates differently than when we get out to, let's say, Michigan, where immigration isn't a top issue, but the economy is over 40%, and voters might be voting on that topic, which might, change where, the outcome there, tighten that race, while in Arizona, it might go in another direction.
In addition to the polling that you guys are doing, talking to voters, we now have early voting data. Is that something that you guys at Emerson College are tracking and incorporating into your results in some fashion?
Well, we track the early vote, but the early voting can be a little bit of a red herring because if a lot of Democrats came out early or a lot of Republicans come out early and we predicate our polling on those numbers and then it changes, that's going to change what the polling looks like. So we've created a model of what we expect the voter turnout to look like. And what we do is we monitor the early vote to see if it's in line with our modeling. And what we're seeing so far in that early vote is it's sort of skewed towards older voters, and that's in line, but that means the Democrats are going to have to get out their younger vote on election day, and we might find a stronger election day turnout for the Democrats than what we saw in 2020.
Interesting. One last question before we go here. It's a complicated topic to fit in at the end here, but what would you say to people who, still maybe remember what happened with the big polling miss in 2016? What things have you guys at Emerson done and the industry at large done to kind of, deal with the non-response bias and some of the issues that made that election such a big miss?
Well, I think most importantly is to remember that a survey and a poll is a range of scores. So even though we talk about Harris up by 1 point in the Silver State, that 1 point is on a range of a 3-point scale. So she could be at 50%, she could be as high as 53 and as low as 47. And if Trump's at 47%, he could be as high as 50 and as low as 44. So it's important that these surveys in polls are read as a range and not an exact score. But with that said, look at the trends and see if you start noticing a lot of polls going in one direction or another. As you mentioned, we've noticed that races have all tightened up generally across the board. So we see that trend happening. We'll see over the next 4 or 5 days if there's any breaking trends before the election.
It's not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but it will be close. And hey, we might not know on Tuesday, November 5th. Spencer Kimball, the director of Emerson College Polling, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate getting some of your time. Best of luck the rest of the way.
I appreciate it. Have a great day and remember to vote.